So for over 50 years, the moon has been a place we once went to. So after the Apollo missions, we didn't do anything. Then we just stopped. Until today, NASA's just officially declared that the era of visiting is over. We aren't just going back, we're moving in. So Jared Isaacman announced a 3-phase plan of how we're going to get ourselves back on the moon and make it a permanent base away from Earth. Yeah, so this is the most exciting news to come out of NASA in over 50 years. It's a 3-phase plan. They're going to be putting drones on the moon. They're going to be putting underground habitats and all that kind of stuff. So let's get into it. So NASA have called this the Ignition Roadmap, and it is broken into 3 phases of going to the moon. Phase 1, we build, test and learn. This is basically a scout phase where we're flooding the lunar surface with moonfall drones and the Viper rover. And this is going to hunt for one thing, which is going to be water. Once they've found the water, then they have to map the terrain and prove they can actually survive the lunar night before they actually send any heavy gear to that part of the moon. Next up, we have phase 2, build the infrastructure. This is where the moon gets its first neighborhoods. We're talking about power grids, surface communications, and also the debut of a new pressurized rover. This new rover has a lab on there, so they're able to do work on there as well, guys. So it's not just going to be about traveling around the moon. They can actually do tests on the move. So how exciting is that, eh? And then finally, we have phase 3, which is called moving in for good. Phase 3 is basically the end game. This is where the moon stops being a place where we once visited and starts being a place we actually live. To make all this happen, NASA is bringing in the heavy hitters. So first, you have the heavy habitats. These are massive pressurized homes, and these are built so the astronauts can actually live in there in short sleeves for months at a time. It's going to be very comfortable for them, and it's not going to be all tight and compact like some of the previous ideas. Next, you have the fission surface power. Since solar panels don't work in the dark, we're landing small nuclear reactors to keep the heaters and lights on during the 2-week-long lunar night. And then finally, there's the cargo HLS. These are giant versions of SpaceX's Starship and Blue Origin's landers. They are the 18-wheelers of space designed to drop 100 tons of gear in a single trip. This isn't just a mission anymore, it's a permanent neighborhood on humanity's 8th continent. So those are the 3 big steps. But let's start at the beginning with phase 1. This is what I call the scout phase, and it's arguably the most important part of the whole plan. Think about it. Before you build a house, you need to have a survey of the land, right? Well, that's exactly what NASA is doing right now. They're flooding the lunar South Pole with a fleet of high-tech explorers. First up, you've got the moonfall drones. These are basically rocket-powered hoppers, and since the moon's surface is covered in giant craters and jagged rocks, these are perfect for exploring areas where a normal rover can't actually go. Then we have the Viper rover. This thing is on a mission to find one specific thing, which is water. We already know there's ice hidden in the dark shadows of the moon, but Viper is going to go in and find exactly where it is. We can find enough water. We can make oxygen and even rocket fuel right there on the surface, and this basically changes everything. And finally, we're using high-rate landings. Instead of waiting years between missions, NASA wants to send smaller, cheaper landers almost every month. It's all about building muscle memory. We're practicing how to land, how to move, and how to survive. Once we master phase 1, then we're ready to bring in the big stuff. But phase 1 is just the warm-up phase. Then let's talk about phase 2. Where the moon actually starts to get its first power grid. This is where things get exciting. This is when the moon starts to look less like a desert and more like a construction site. I call this the early infrastructure phase. The goal here is simple. We need to set up the utilities, just like when you build a house on Earth. You need power, water, and a way to get around. Now, the main start of phase 2 is definitely the pressurized rover. This is a massive project with JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency, and Toyota. Think of it as an ultimate space camper van, right? Now, astronauts normally have to wear bulky gear, but when they get in this thing, they can take the bulky gear off and drive around in their short-sleeved t-shirts. And it's a lot more comfortable, and they can drive for hundreds of miles at a time. This rover sounds great, but if you don't have a way to charge it, then there's massive problems. So phase 2 is also about building the grid. NASA is going to be landing vertical solar towers and early power stations, and this is going to create a lunar network. They're also setting up lunar GPS and a high-speed communication system. So think of it like this: an astronaut could be traveling across the lunar surface and FaceTiming with you on Earth. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. So we've scaled to the land in phase 1, we built the power grid in phase 2, now we reach the end game, which is phase 3. This is the permanent presence phase. This is when the moon stops being a destination and starts being a home. So to make this work, NASA is bringing in the heavy hitters, and it starts with the habitats. These aren't just tiny tents or tiny capsules. We're talking about massive high-tech houses built by their Italian partners. These modules are incredible. They're designed to keep astronauts safe from radiation and all the tiny debris that can hit them from space. So to keep this little city running, you're going to need a lot of power, and that's where nuclear power comes in. Now don't let that name scare you. These are small, safe power plants. The main reason why you need power plants on the moon like this, especially nuclear, is because one night on the moon lasts for 14 days. It gets very cold and very dark. So solar panel just wouldn't cut the mustard, guys. You need that nuclear power. So to build this city, you're going to need to move a lot of heavy gear. And that's why NASA is working with SpaceX and BlueOrigin to build giant freight ships. We're talking about the cargo Starship. This thing is a beast. It can drop 100 tons of equipment on the moon in just one trip. So think about this. One landing can bring a power plant, a rover, and a month's worth of food all at once. It's like the 18-wheeler of space, and it's the key to making this whole plan work. So by the time we finish phase 3, we won't just be visiting the moon anymore, we'll be living there. And we'll have our own power on there, and we're also going to have our own homes on there. And also you're going to have a nice front row seat to the future. Because once we master the moon, we take all that tech and then head straight to Mars. So this is the 3-step ignition plan by NASA, and honestly it's the most exciting time to be a space fan in history, guys. And finally, one last thing, NASA is basically going to be spending $20 billion on this project for the full 3 phases. I personally think they're probably going to go over that, because every time NASA does anything like the James Webb Space Telescope, all these projects, they always underestimate how much it's going to cost. So I think 20 billion is probably the minimum they're going to spend. What do you think? Do you reckon they're going to spend like 30 billion or 40 billion? Because I think once they started, they can't scrap this because they're going to be too committed. Because obviously getting on the moon, they want to beat the Chinese. You know, that's kind of in the background. So that's the unofficial space race. But what do you think? Do you reckon they're going to stick to the $20 billion project, or do you reckon it's going to blow out the window? Because I think that a lot of times they normally go over budget, but I could be wrong. Anyway, for this video, that's everything I've got to talk about and the latest update on the Ignition 3-phase plan. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.